Okay, so we're going to go over the 10 most important rhetorical devices that you need to know. These are not the only ones, of course. However, they are the ones that are most likely to show up on the actual test. I want to make sure we're clear on those. So here's a list of the 10. It's not all inclusive, as I mentioned. There are other ones that are important. However, these are the ones that we're going to focus on as we prepare for the test. Some other ones that I just wanted to mention, anaphora, colloquialism, enumeratio, hyperphora, rhetorical question, and sarcasm. All of these are also things that we've covered in class and are important and would be good to know. However, most of these are actually just more specific terms for some of the broader things that we are covering today. Anaphora, for example, is a type of repetition. Colloquialism is a type of diction. Enumeratio, the listing of details. It's really a syntax choice that makes you feel overwhelmed. Similarly, hyperphora, rhetorical question, those are syntax choices, and sarcasm is, of course, a form of tone. So with that, let's get started. Allusion. An allusion is basically something that indirectly references something or references something but doesn't explain the entire thing. So it's raining so much that we might need to build an ark. Is of course a reference to Noah's Ark, the story from the Bible, but it is not enough just to, you don't have to explain the whole story, it's just a mention of it or a reference. She was his Juliet. This is really saying that he cares so much about her, he would go to the ends of the earth for her. And maybe it didn't work out because, of course, Romeo and Juliet didn't quite work out in the story. They didn't get to live their lives together. Yeah, reference to Romeo and Juliet and how much someone cares about someone else. Analogy. Analogy, of course, is a comparison between two things. Usually, it's the relationship between the two that's helping to explain something or explain the other one. So, the solar system is like an atom. I'm using how a solar system functions and how an atom functions to compare one to the other and help explain it. So, the sun is basically the nucleus, the planets are like the electrons. You can see how the planets swing around the sun like the atoms swing around the nucleus. Diction and tone. Diction and tone, both incredibly important here to understand. Diction, of course, is the author's word choice, where tone is more about how the author feels about the subject. What is their attitude towards it? So, in The Boxman, the story you're going to be reading today, the homeless person is literally named the Boxman. That's a title. It's a way of indicating, status and the fact that they appreciate and respect this person. Homeless is a way to describe somebody that's kind of neutral. It's not, overly positive. It's not really negative. However, as you can see, the example of being called a quote-unquote bum at the bottom would, of course, be a very negative way of looking at somebody and really tell you a lot about how that person feels about someone who's homeless. Imagery, definition here is the five senses. It's all five of them. It's not just sight, which is the one we most closely associate with imagery. But the smell of fresh bread, even after years, I could still hear the battle cry. All of those things would be examples of imagery because they activate all five senses. Irony. Now, irony has a couple different things. It could be dramatic irony, it could be verbal irony. Most of the time, we're going to be dealing with situational irony when we talk about the test. So the example of situational irony here is something that happens in a way opposite of what could or what you would expect to happen. So if someone is, the fire station is on fire, you wouldn't expect that to happen. It would be situational irony, just like you wouldn't expect somebody who is in a position of power, like the president or the government official, to do something that wouldn't be like that. And so it would be against those things that you associate with it. But the other examples are there just to provide some background. Juxtaposition. Juxtaposition is when you place two ideas closely together to produce this unique contrast or effect. And so this is one of the most important ones. It's usually very prominent in the rhetorical analysis, so be aware of when two ideas are being put next to each other or near each other to compare them. So all's fair in love and war. Love and war, of course, those two ideas are not exact opposites, but definitely on the opposite end of what they could mean. And of course, love, this very positive thing that we associate with war, this very terrible, grueling thing. It gives a nice, interesting juxtaposition and contrast to what we think of when we think about what it means to be in a relationship. She was wild and free. Wild, of course, and free being compared together here gives you this kind of unique combination of what the two would look like when they go together. And then I also wanted to bring up things like the ancient structure of the Roman Colosseum with a modern highway. There are images or things that people can talk about that juxtapose each other because the ancient structure really evokes a time from long ago where the modern highway really pushes them forward. You can kind of get a feeling for what it is when those two things are mixed together. Okay, metaphor. Now, metaphor is directly comparing something to kind of give the characteristics of the one thing to the other thing. And so that test was a breeze. A breeze, very easy, very light. I thought it was tough, but it shouldn't be anything, besides smooth sailing from here. Smooth sailing compares to the journey that'll be after the test is over, nice and easy. Okay, parallelism. So with parallelism, it's when a phrase is repeated or a word or idea is repeated, and it kind of echoes throughout the passage. I think oftentimes comedians do this. Comedians will introduce an idea early on, and then they'll refer back to it in a callback, and that idea will then mean something different. That's a great idea, a great example of parallelism. Similarly, with the word fresh in Judy Brady's I Want a Wife that we read in the beginning of the year, she mentions fresh with her divorced friend, and then again at the end to kind of show how mad she is at him and other people in that situation. Repetition. Now, repetition is similar to parallelism, but it's not quite the same thing because it doesn't hint at this greater idea. It hints at the importance of the idea that's already been stated. So I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. Not only does it talk about how important this dream is, it also kind of creates momentum for how as Martin Luther King goes through this speech, each one of these points becomes more and more important. And syntax. Syntax, of course, is the organization or arrangement of the words and phrases to kind of help create a greater meaning. Short sentences, as a good rule of thumb, usually make things stand out, more important. Longer sentences tend to mimic the feeling of this thing is going on and on and on. Maybe a character is, in a situation where they want the thing to go longer or the thing feels like it's going forever, but longer sentences tend to mimic that feeling of going on and on. Okay, so if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Number is 440-670-6979. Email address is right there. Really, my office hours are whenever, so please feel free to call, text, whenever you have a question, or email. But my office hours specifically, where that's all I will be doing, are on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. So hope you're doing well and look forward to talking to you soon.